Hey, what's up, leader? Your coach Kamille Rose here with another Ultimate Life Monday Mindset Mastery episode. And welcome back to our three-part series here on being a masterful communicator when you're feeling angry, sad, or hurt. So another way to say that, when emotions are really high, when you're really angry, ticked off, pissed off, whatever the term is for you, and you want to communicate effectively as a leader, how on earth do you do that? And that's what we're covering right now. And today is episode 2 in this three-part series. So if you missed the first episode called Facts versus Feelings, click that link above on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook or Instagram, you can click it in the notes below. But today's episode, after you've gotten a hang of, okay, how do I see the other story in the story? That's what we talked about in Facts versus Feelings. There's 3 parts to every story. Today is now called 3 Clever Stories We Tell Ourselves, because there are also 3 subconscious stories that most people tell that they don't even realize that they're telling in the back of their mind, that cause them to react a certain way to things, that cause you to respond in a way that maybe isn't very effective. So today I want to show you what those 3 stories are so that you can nip it in the bud. You can catch it. Oh, Kamille, I'm telling that story. And then I'm going to give you a way around that. Questions to ask yourself so that you can move the conversation forward in a really productive, fair, and progressive way, so that you can get to the solution and not just cycle in the negativity of what's happening. So I think all business owners, leaders need that at any point in time, but especially right now as we record this, the conversation around racism is heavy in the United States. And one of the top things that I'm coaching on with most of my executives and business owners is how to have the difficult conversations right now. So if you're struggling with that, definitely watch this series on masterful communication when emotions are high. So before we get into the content, please, if you haven't, click that bell and that subscribe button. The more subscribers we get, the more I'm able to deliver this free, valuable content to you as a leader every single week. So thank you for being a subscriber, for sharing the video, for being a supporter. It means a lot to me, especially as we are now in our, I think, fourth year here with the Ultimate Life. It's been a dream come true, and I just thank you for helping me every single week, every single day, really, for those who send me messages. It's truly a blessing to be your coach. All right, with that said, thank you for hitting that bell and that subscribe button. So now let's get into episode number 2 called The 3 Clever Stories. Hey, what's up, fam? Kamille Rose here, founder of The Ultimate Life, peak performance coach to entrepreneurs and leaders, and I'm a member of the Forbes Coaches Council. And this is your Monday Mastery Minute, where every Monday I take a few minutes to show you how you can achieve mastery in your business and your personal life. So let's jump right into it. All right, the 3 clever stories. More specifically, the 3 clever stories we tell ourselves. Now, this comes from one of my favorite books on communication. This is Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. All the authors of this book are leading authorities in organizational effectiveness and leadership for 300 out of the Fortune 500 companies. So they know a thing or two about consulting people who have high-stake conversations all day long, and then how to manage that. And really how to be effective as a leader. Now, one of the chapters in this book is on the 3 clever stories, so I highly recommend it. Check it out. You can go to that chapter to read more. But today, I just want to give you a quick overview on what are those 3 clever stories that we might be telling ourselves to either get out of a situation, remove our responsibility from it. But then no matter what we tell ourselves, remember that stories create feelings. So if you do not like how you feel, I want you to check the story you're telling yourself about this situation. Now remember, in the first video, I talked about facts versus feelings. So that's why I said there are 3 sides to every story. Now, what I'm showing you is on the flip side of this, I want you to check your own story, which might be stopping you from actually getting to see absolute truth. Now, these are subconscious stories that have come from childhood, patternings, things that we just got used to doing and getting away with. So as a leader, remember, you are held to a much higher level of accountability because of the influence that you've been given over people. The influence to help them succeed in business, the influence to help them succeed in real estate, in finances, in coaching. So it's a blessing, but it's also a responsibility on your part. So I hope that these questions today will help you think more clearly about, oh, okay, I see why I tend to do that. So Let me redirect in this way. So here are the 3 clever stories according to the authors. The first story is called The Victim Story. It's not my fault. The second story is The Villain Story. It's all your fault. And then the third story is The Helpless Story. There's nothing else I can do. So quickly, here's an example of the victim story. It's not my fault. This is where you make the other person bad and wrong, and you're always good and right. So it says here as an example, to help support your victim story, you speak of nothing but your noble motives. So you might say, I took longer because I was trying to beat the standard specs. And then you tell yourself that you're being punished for your virtues, not your vices. Well, he just doesn't appreciate a person with my superb attention to detail. So this added twist turns you from victim into martyr. So now it's an even more of a bonus. So just check yourself. Do you tend to do that? Like, oh my gosh, they're such a horrible person because they don't see all the things that I do. So that's one part of it. That's called the victim story. Now let's look at the reverse of this. It's called the villain story. Now this is all your fault. Now this one is where we create nasty little tales by turning normal, decent human beings into villains. And I see this a lot, especially in couples, because when you're married, when you're with somebody for a long time, that's typically your most intimate relationship, right? You get more triggered by them because they might say things that really hurt you. So the villain story comes out because it's like, oh, how could they? How could they see me in this way? And then they're the horrible person. So checking yourself when you make them the villain. So here's an example. Labeling is a common device in villain stories. So if you catch yourself saying something like, oh, I can't believe that bonehead gave me bad materials again. By employing the label, then we are now dealing not with a complex human being, but with just a bonehead. So now we've literally objectified that person. So it's much easier to pass judgment. It's much easier to just write them off because they're not a complex human being with a story, with a day that's gone bad, with a best friend who just got diagnosed with COVID-19 and really can't have a long conversation with you or doesn't have patience, right? Now they're just a bonehead. So people who tend to throw labels are using the villain story. Somebody's a bad guy and I'm always a good guy. And then last example is the helpless story. There's nothing else I can do. So in these fabrications, it says here that we make ourselves out to be powerless to do anything. We convince ourselves that there are no healthy alternatives for dealing with our situation, which then justifies the action we're about to take. So most people will use the helpless story to justify the action they're taking because they say, well, there's nothing else that can be done, so I have to do this. So an example of a helpless story might suggest, well, if I didn't yell at my son, he wouldn't listen. Okay. Now, you may have tested this out a couple of times. I'm not commenting on your parenting style, but just careful of the story because the truth is there might be another route. There might be another way. And anytime we make extreme generalities, like I've tried everything, that's rarely the case. It just feels like we've tried a lot of things, and so we're tired. So again, stories create feelings, so be careful of that as a leader. Another one of the helpless story, just give you one more example. On the flip side, if I told my husband this, he would just be defensive. So here we are particularly making it easy to act helpless, particularly when we make others' behaviors into fixed or unchangeable traits. So we are basically saying that person will never change. They've always been like this. They'll always be like this. Again, they're not a complex human being. They're just a labeled robot. They just are. So while in your heart, in your mood right now, you might feel that way about somebody. No, Kamille, this person's a jerk. This person is horrible. They're dumb. Be careful of telling those stories. And the way I like to see it is, would I want those stories being told back to me? Because the truth is, I'm not always on my A game. I have moments where I need a little bit more grace, And I'm so appreciative of my clients, of my mentors, of my friends, of my partner who knows how to give me that grace, because they didn't just create a story about me in that moment. They were willing to see me for who I am, see me for what I've been going through. So it's the same for you as a leader. Your job is to create a safe space for people's absolute best and truth to come out. But again, the key word here is safe space, emotionally, especially. So here's your challenge for the week. Number 1 is catch yourself when you are telling one of those victim, villain, or helpless stories. Which clever story do you catch yourself using most of the time? And then I want you to ask these 4 questions to get out of it. So this is called tell the rest of your story. Question number 1, am I pretending not to notice my role in the problem? Very important, especially for the victim person, or if you're villainizing somebody else. Number 2, this one's a hard one, especially if you're playing the helpless story. Why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do this? So the assumption is that they are a reasonable, rational, and decent person. And I get it. Especially now, it's hard to see people that way. But remember, careful of the label. And remembering that all human beings are complex creatures. So there's more to it than meets the eye. Third question, what do I really want? And I like this question because you have to get clear as a leader on what you want in this situation. What is it that you need? How will you move this forward? And the fourth and final question to tell the rest of the story, what would I do right now if I really wanted these results? So whatever it is that you are trying to get through, whatever puzzle you are trying to solve, get clear as a leader is what you want in this situation, and start checking for what stories you might be telling yourself that distort the truth. So that's your challenge for the week. Meet me next week where we finalize this series on how to be a masterful communicator when emotions are high. Keep leading from love.